Alright, hello everybody. Welcome to the NFL predictions. My name is Fireknight. I will be your host, and today we will be looking at the Week 8 predictions for the NFL 2016-2017 season. So, without further ado, first things first, let me just go ahead and address the fact that after Sunday night's atrocious, super atrocious game between the Seahawks and the Cardinals that ended in a tie, I had to come up with a new type of shading just for ties because I didn't think of what happened. But anyway, now that's all covered and done, let's go ahead and look at who I believe will be making playoffs, how I believe every two seasons will go. So let's just start to get to it before I end up, missing tonight's game. Today, October 27th, the Thursday night game between the Tennessee Titans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. So let's get to it already. Arizona Cardinals, I believe they're going to go 4-11-1. Reason being, after the performance that they showed where they could not get their kicks through, their kicks were the only reason why they actually lost the game versus the Seahawks. The Seahawks could not get the ball down the field except in overtime. But when it came to the regular game, the Cardinals could get in the field goal range, he just never could get the kicks through, and Catanzaro is going to lose his job if he doesn't get that fixed. So, that being the case, I believe the Cardinals, still the way that they are everywhere else with the ball, just are not going to be that much of an impressive team. I think their only other win this season is going to come up against San Francisco 49ers in Week 10. Other than that, I don't think they're going to have any win at all because they have a pretty tough schedule ahead of them. And they're not showing that much consistency, that much skill. So, yeah, that's why I think that they're just not going to make the playoffs this season. Next team, Baltimore Ravens. I believe they're still going to go 3-13. They will not see another win this season simply because they are not showing any form of consistency whatsoever. And we're definitely not going to see any progress from that team since they're on bye. Week 9 is when we see if anything has changed, but they're going up against the Steelers, for Pete's sake. And we all know that that's probably going to be just a mess. Whether it be Landry Jones or Ben Roethlisberger. Clearly with Roethlisberger, it's going to be worse for them. But if it's Landry Jones, I still think that the Steelers are going to take them out. So I don't see the Ravens having a good season. Next up, we will go to the Carolina Panthers, who I believe will end the season with a 4-12. They are in desperate need of some help all around the ball. Their offense is not looking like what it was last year, and your defense is even worse than that. So, that being the problem, if they can help their defense more than anything, so that way they can prevent other teams from scoring on them, then maybe they'll have a better shot at potentially coming into the playoffs. But that's just what I've been observing so far. I do see them getting the 3 other wins versus the Cardinals, the Rams, and the Buccaneers all the way at the end of the season. But at the current moment, the Panthers are just not showing what they were last season. And until they show some improvement, they will not be making the playoffs as far as I'm concerned with my predictions here. Next up will be the Chicago Bears, who I believe will not be replicating what the Chicago Cubs are doing, if you get what I'm saying. They, I believe, will go 1-15 because this is a team that has been 100% riddled with injuries. They do not have a shot up against anybody they're going to be going up against this entire season, simply because they need help keeping their players healthy. Once they start that, once they can start becoming a little more consistent with getting the ball down the field and preventing other teams from getting down their end zone, then maybe I can see them getting a few more wins. If they prove me wrong in Week 8 up against the Vikings and at least show a little bit of progress up against them, then I could have enough reason to say that they deserve more wins. But until then, I'm just going to say that they're going to be, without question, the worst team in the NFL simply because of that. Now, next team up, the first positive team that we're going to be seeing my predictions is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals, who I believe will go 9-7. That's enough to be a positive, but not enough to make playoffs. They are very good with their offense, but their defense can let really almost anyone go through. Clearly the Browns couldn't get through after a while because of the injuries that they received to Cody Kessler and then having to rely on Hogan. Not saying Hogan is bad, just saying that they have to, keep changing things up just because of that. But The defense I've been seeing from the Bengals has not been holding up to a lot of teams. That's why they're negative right now. That's why even if they do manage to get positive according to my predictions, they will not make the playoffs. Their offense is strong, but their defense needs help. Next up, Cleveland Browns. Remember when I said that the Chicago Bears are going to be the worst team in the NFL this season? I truly believe that because the Browns are getting Kessler back week 8. They are getting not Kessler, they're getting McCown. They're getting McCown back week 8 up against the Jets. And if anything has changed with their offensive line strategy in order to protect the quarterback more, then they have a really good shot at getting their first win this season up against the New York Jets, who have been terrible as far as consistency goes. The Browns, they want to be consistent, and they have consistent ideas, but because the injuries that have been hitting this team so hard, it's not going to work. But now they have a potential chance at that, but their O-line needs to improve, their defense definitely needs to improve. If those two things are in the wheelhouse for the Browns, they can have at least the 2-14 season I predict them having. But we're going to have to watch week 8 and the rest of the season for them, which is just goodness. Like, I can see the NFL just have something up against the Browns because with this kind of a team, why would you give them this tough of a schedule? But that's my personal opinion. Anyway, moving on. Next up will be the Houston Texans, who I believe will go 5-11. Now, a lot of the analysts and other predictors out there would say that the Texans are en route to making the playoffs this season. I actually would contrast that. I would actually say that no, I don't think they're making the playoffs, and the reason why is this. They have a problem with getting the ball down the field at any crucial point. Meaning that the few wins that they had, the 4 wins that they have so far, have been because they are able to get the ball down the field only 1 or 2 times during an entire game. Other than that, they need to kick their field goals or they just don't make it into field goal range, period. The Texans need help there. Their defense is certainly in need of help because anybody can throw over them. So, that being the case, I think the Texans are certainly in need of help when it comes to potentially getting the ball down the field enough times in order to score enough times in order to be more manageable as a potential playoff team for the AFC South, which at the current moment is looking like the weakest division next to the NFC West. But we're just going to have to find out from this point because other than that, I can't really predict that well with the Texans, but we'll just find out. Week 8 is not going to be a good test it will be a good test because they're going up against the Detroit Lions, and that could potentially tell me if they'll make it or not. But let's continue on. Next up, Indianapolis Colts. I believe they're going to go 6-10. Their defense still needs help, but their offense is showing improvement. They are getting the ball down the field. They are getting in the end zone, probably more than any other team actually in the AFC South, besides potentially the Tennessee Titans now. But they are improving the Colts, but not enough in order to guarantee them a spot in the playoffs. They are not showing the correct consistency, and they are not showing improvements that much anyway when it comes to defense. So that's what I think with them, but we'll find out if that changes or not. Next up, Jacksonville Jaguars. I believe they're going to go 5-11. This is a team that in the offseason on paper looked like a playoff team. And at the moment, they're looking like just another run-of-the-mill, another bad season for the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's just not working out right now. That's what it looks like. And after the game up against the Raiders, I can agree that. Even after the game with the Bears that they won, I can agree that they are not that good. Here's the reason why. It took them almost 4 quarters in order to make the end zone. It shouldn't take that long against the Bears. So, that being the case, I think they're going to go 5-11 and they won't make it into the playoffs this season, unfortunately. But if they win tonight up against the Tennessee Titans against my predictions, then And if they show that they won by pure skill and talent and strategy put all together with a good enough defense, maybe they could have a shot at the playoffs this season, but we'll find out. Then comes the Kansas City Chiefs, who I believe will be going a good 10-6, another positive team. The only reason I don't see the Chiefs making the playoffs is because I think they are, and a lot of analysts out there are starting to think this as well, that the AFC West is without question the most competitive division in the league. All four teams are showing a lot of prowess and a lot of power on both sides of the ball, one way or another. If it's not the offense that is getting that ball to work in their favor, it's the defense that is just taking a favor away from any enemy team. That being the case, the Kansas City Chiefs are definitely going to be a strong team at the end of this season, but unless something happens to the Chargers, like what happened throughout the beginning of their season, or if anything happens to the Broncos where they lose potentially Simeon, or if anything happens to the Raiders where they potentially lose Carr or any of his great receivers there, same thing with the Broncos, anything else happens with the AFC West, the Chiefs might have a shot. But that is going to be left to be shown. Next up are the Los Angeles Rams, who I believe will go 7-9. This is a very confusing team. I can't see consistency with them. Fisher wants to keep Keenum. He's not really giving Goff that many chances at even showing if he, could be worth that whole first-round pick. Because at this point, if Goff is not put out on the field at any point this season, especially in any clutch moments where Keenum is looking like he's actually costing the team, if they're not giving Goff the chances he needs that shows that he was worth that draft pick, then I'm going to say that A, the Rams are not going to make the playoffs, and B, Goff should potentially look for another team to sign him up. He should put it out there if that happens. But there's no way I can assess that at the moment because this is going to be their bye week after their international game. So, that being the case, we're going to have to wait till week 9 when they go up against the Panthers, and we'll see. But until then, I just don't see them making it into the playoffs. Next team on the list is the Miami Dolphins, who I believe will go 8-8. They're showing progress. They're showing some very good progress at the moment. Unfortunately, there's nothing else I can assess at the moment due to the fact that this is also their bye week. So I'm going to have to wait until week 9 when they go up against the divisional rival, the Jets, who I believe they'll be able to beat. Even though I have it here saying that I think they're going to lose to the Jets, I think the Jets are just going to be pissed off at them that they want to win like that badly. But I could be wrong about the whole thing. I might change that upcoming next week's predictions. But, I mean, at the current moment, I just see them going neutral. I think the Dolphins definitely could have a shot at making the playoffs if I see improvement. Because Ajayi is showing a huge amount of progress. This guy can run the ball down any team's throat. So, if I can see better defense out of the Dolphins and better skill out of better thinking out of Tannehill, then potentially they could be playoff team. But we're gonna have to wait until week 9 in order to find that out. Next up is going to be the New Orleans Saints. I believe they'll go 9-7. They are not showing their strengths. They can sling the ball down the field to anybody. Breeze has definitely proven that. But their defense is weak. Their defense can let anyone go through. And when their offense starts to become undependable at any point in the game, it shows. And it makes another team really take advantage of them. So, I believe them to have a positive season, but not enough to make the playoffs. That's what I can say about the Saints. Excuse that. Alright. Next up, New York Giants, I believe will go 7-9. Unfortunately, even after that win up against the Rams, that wasn't a good win. That was a very easy win because Keenum was just throwing interception after interception. That's a good thing for us defensively, finally. But that was the Rams. We have the Eagles coming up in week 9. So that being the case, if the Eagles show as much strength against us as they did with the Vikings to give them their first loss of the season, I don't see us, if we don't improve up against the Eagles, then that means our season's basically over at that point. So that's what I can assess from the Giants at the current moment, but we'll find out. Let's see here. Next up is the New York Jets, who, let's just admit it, with Ryan Fitzpatrick or Geno Smith, it's not the quarterbacks that are to 100% blame, I could say, but I don't see the Jets going anything further than the 3-13. They're laying goose eggs, like I've been saying. They've been struggling too hard. They're not going to make the playoffs this season. They're not going to be anywhere near what they were last season. That's what I'm able to tell. But they could prove me wrong. But if the Browns beat them like I'm predicting them to, then the Jets season is basically over. But hey, Next up, we will be looking at the Philadelphia Eagles, who I was just talking about. I think they're going to go positive with a 9-7 because their pass rushing is still pretty good. Their quarterback Wentz is very good, but the rest of the team, I don't know what's going on with them because they had that really nice looking streak at the beginning of the season. They come out of bye and then they just dump. But then they get that weird win over the Vikings. I don't know how to truly assess the Eagles at the moment, but I can say that if they actually get a win up against the Cowboys or just show better play, like similar play to what they did with the Vikings and actually shut the Cowboys down a little bit, even if it's a loss, if it's a close loss, maybe I can see them potentially getting a better record in the end of the season, maybe making the playoffs. Who knows? We'll find out soon enough. Next up, be looking at the San Diego Chargers. I gotta admit, San Diego, you really showed up. You showed up hard on your last 2 games. Week 8, if the Broncos defense in fact hurts the Chargers offense, then it'll just be another sign that the Chargers are going to be the toughest team to beat that will not make the playoffs, which sucks for them. But if they prove me wrong and they actually start winning consistent games, then they definitely have a shot at making the playoffs, and I won't be surprised because all around you can tell the Chargers are a tough team. It's just that they don't have, for some reason, some type of consistency, but now it looks like they finally found something. And if that sticks, they'll make the playoffs. Next up would be the San Francisco 49ers, who I believe will be going 3-13. They are not showing any form of consistency when it comes to getting the ball down the field. They just can't do it. Even no matter if it's Gabbert, no matter if it's Kaepernick, it doesn't matter who's quarterback. The rest of the team is not working. That's all I can say. 49ers, if they can help themselves in any form or fashion when it comes to both offense and defense, then they may have a shot at making playoffs. But they really are going to need to start fighting now because they're on a huge losing streak. And if it continues, there's no playoffs ahead of them. I can say that right now. Next up, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I believe are going to go 4-12. They are a strange, inconsistent team that only consistency that they show is the fact that they have a tough time getting things to work correctly. Yeah, they have 2 back-to-back wins at the current moment with the Panthers and the 49ers, but they're going up against Oakland, and Oakland's not a pushover team at the current moment. Their schedule is also pretty darn tough. I don't think the Buccaneers are going to be making playoffs. I think they're just going to be pretty stomped. But we'll find out soon enough about that. And then finally, before we get into the teams that will make the playoffs, there is the Washington Redskins, who I believe will go 7-9 due to the fact that, especially after that loss to Detroit, I don't think they're going to be getting that many more wins in the season. They have other games coming up in the season that they can definitely win. Some that I might actually be wrong about. But until they show more improvement, they're not going to go to the playoffs. They're not going to repeat last season. That's a fact. Now, let's go ahead and move over to the teams that are making the playoffs. And the first teams we're going to be talking about, of course, are the teams that I believe will lose in the wild card round. First team up is going to be the Denver Broncos. I believe that they will manage to make it to the playoffs with an 11-5 record. And their defense is going to be the biggest reason they'll make it there, but their offense has been consistently lackluster. They need to improve that, otherwise I think once they get to the wild card, and if they go up against the Bills like I'm predicting, they will not be able to stop the Bills' offense from scoring, even with their defense. And Bills' defense has significantly improved pretty much ever since week 2. So, that being the case, if Simeon is not a better quarterback, or if even Lynch has to be the play caller, if neither of them are able to actually get the ball down the field as much as they need to, and the Bills stay as consistent as they are, I don't think the Broncos are going to make it past the wild card. Next up would be the Green Bay Packers. And this is an interesting one. I believe they're going 11-5, being the second best team in the NFC North. And I believe they'll lose to the Lions, and here's why. You'll notice on my chart that I have them beating the Lions both times. I mean, they already beat them once, and I think they'll beat them in week 17. So why do I think they're going to lose to them the third time around? The Lions are showing a lot of good improvement. They are showing that they can get that ball down the field, and their defense is starting to come into a good form. The Packers' offense and defense are very good. Like I have said to a lot of people, and I don't know if I've said it amongst my videos here, but I'll digress. With the Green Bay Packers, you are guaranteed a good season. Almost every time you can be guaranteed at least a playoff, maybe. But this time around, I think they'll lose to the Lions in the wild card because despite everything, I just think that in comparison, the Lions would probably end up figuring out how to deal with the Packers and be able to get the ball down the field while at the same time keeping the Packers to at least nothing but field goals, where the Lions would probably be getting their touchdowns. But that's all left to really an ideal, but we'll find out. Next, we have the Seattle Seahawks, which I believe will end the season with a 9-6-1, being the top team in the NFC West, the only team in the NFC West to either make it to the playoffs, and to lose immediately to the Vikings because, let's just face it, they're not showing that much strength. Their offense is good enough, and their defense is good enough, but good enough is not good enough for the NFL. So, that being the case, I think the Seattle Seahawks will not be able to get past the wild card round. And then finally, we have the Tennessee Titans, the only team I believe will be making it to the playoffs, with a 7-9 record. Yes, it's negative, but look at the rest of the division. I think the Titans are the only team showing improvements everywhere when it comes to both offense and defense. The other teams, they need to start showing up, otherwise I don't think they're going to make it, including the Texans, which few people are predicting. I think the Titans are actually in playoff contention, but in the end, they will not make it past the Raiders because, well, let's just face it. If the Titans are in fact improving, like I'm saying, they're doing it at too slow a rate in order to actually show, that much strength. Next up, divisional rounds. Losers on this one. First ones, I believe the Buffalo Bills, who I believe will end with 11-5, will lose to the round, the first seeded playoff contenders, the New England Patriots, simply because, think about it, the Patriots are going to have the number, especially after that shutout. You don't shut out the Patriots without feeling their revenge afterwards. That's a darn fact. So, that being the case, the Bills are great all around the ball, but they're not going to be good enough in order to stop the Patriots. That's what I see. Next up, I believe the Lions, who I think will go 9-7, being the third best team in the NFC North to make it to the playoffs, actually, I believe they'll lose to the Dallas Cowboys because the Cowboys are way too strong of a team everywhere on the ball. Their defense may need a little bit of improvement, but other than that, the Lions are not going to be able to stop them from getting down the field. That goes without question. And, I mean, there's that, and there's their offense, which, like I said, I think they can do something in order to stop the Packers, but the Cowboys are just tough. So that's why I think the Lions will end their run there in the divisionals. Next up, the number 1 seed in the NFC North, the Minnesota Vikings. I think they will beat the Seahawks, but at the same time, they will lose to the Falcons. Reason being, Falcons have way too many weapons when it comes to offense. And Matt Ryan can get that ball out quick. His line is great. The Vikings specialize in sacking and pass rushing. But they're not going to be able to do that with the Falcons. They'll be able to do that with the Seahawks. But I don't think that's going to be enough in order to progress them any further than the divisionals. So that's why I think the Vikings, despite the 13-3 record, will not be a Super Bowl contending team this season, but they're going to have a playoff season that's going to be worth looking at no matter how you see it. Let's see here. And then finally in the divisionals, I believe the number 1 team in the AFC West, the Oakland Raiders, will be able to beat the Titans, but definitely lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And let's just face it, a good reason why I think that is this. They had a dominating performance over the Jaguars, but they had a close game against the Chargers and a close game and a not so close game that they lost to the Chiefs. If anything about that can tell us anything, it's the fact that the Steelers can show better consistency when they have Ben Roethlisberger on the field and when their defense is not slacking. That being the case, I can definitely say that the Raiders will not make it past divisionals, but are definitely a playoff team, which I hope do not move to Las Vegas. They belong in Oakland, as far as I'm concerned. Finally, the conference matchups. I believe the Atlanta Falcons will not be able to pass the Dallas Cowboys, and it's for the same reason I said that the Lions wouldn't pass them. Despite all the weapons, all of the great ways that the Falcons have found a way in order to move the ball down the field, I don't think it's going to be enough in order to beat the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys are too strong offensively. Their defense is strong enough in order to stop a lot of strong teams. The Falcons, despite how many times they're going to be able to fly the football down, it's not going to be enough because in the end, the Cowboys' offense and defense will be able to keep them away from making it to the Super Bowl. It should be a good close game in that one if that comes to fruition, but I don't think the Falcons will be able to make it. They will end the season with a good 13-3, but that's going to be it. Then comes the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I believe will end the season with a 12-4 record, but will lose to the Patriots in the conference matchup simply because it's the Patriots. They're going to be able to analyze and destroy that team, and they just took a pounding from the Patriots, albeit the fact that their defense was a little lacking and they had Landry Jones. But even if that whole team was there, the Patriots would knock them down completely. Their offense is too strong even for a Steelers defense, for Pete's sake. So, that being the case, I think the Steelers have a good season in front of them to become even the number 2 seed in the playoff, but they won't be able to get past conference. So, what does that leave us with? That leaves us with the Super Bowl. I think it's going to be a darn great match up against the Cowboys and the Patriots, but at the end of everything, the 2 teams, I believe, that will go 15-1 in the end will come down to the Cowboys having a close loss to the New England Patriots, who I believe and have been believing from pretty much week 4 or 3. I can't remember which video it was, but from a good while now, I believe the Patriots are on their way to another Super Bowl championship with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick at the helm. That being the case, those are my predictions for Week 8. Let's see what happens In the meantime, this is Fireknight 3 signing out.